Alright, so continuing on with number lines and positive and negative numbers. So this next one here, we're going to look at opposites and their roles, and what we see happens as we add opposites together. So it says draw an arrow on the number line to represent these situations. So the temperature was negative 5 degrees, so I'm just going to refer here to so there's little tick marks on this line that you can use. If not, just make one on your own paper. But we can use to represent the tick marks, so we'll just label one of them as 0. Okay. So the first line, we go over to -5. So the temperature's at -5, and then the temperature rose 5 degrees. So it rose 5 degrees, and we're back at 0. So those two kind of cancel each other out. The opposites reset us right back at 0. Okay, B, a climber was 30 feet above sea level. 2, 2, 4. Okay, I'm just going to do 5, 10, 15, 30. Okay, so 30 feet above sea level. Nope. I skipped 25 in my counting here. So 20, 25, 30. So he went out 30 feet above sea level, then descended 30 feet. So think of somebody on maybe climbing right off the ocean, up a hill. They climb up the mountain or the rock face 30 feet. And then if they were to descend down and be back in the water, they'd be at 0, right? So these are opposites. When you add opposites, your outcome becomes 0. So what is the opposite? So part 2. So if you run 150 feet east, so east would be that way. The opposite would be running 150 feet west. Okay, jumping down 10 flights of stairs. So the opposite of that would be jumping up 10 flights of stairs. Okay, so these distances are the same, and it brings you right back to where you were if you did the opposite. Okay, pouring 8 gallons of water into a fish tank. So the opposite would be draining that fish tank of 8 gallons of water. All right, so once again, you had an empty fish tank, you filled it up, then you emptied it out. You're back to where you started. You're at 0. Okay, so we're going to be looking a little bit at opposites as well as adding and subtracting some more positive and negative numbers. Okay, so here, number 3.2, cliffs and caves. So it says, the mountaineer is climbing on a cliff. She is 400 feet above the ground. If she climbs up, this will be a positive change. If she climbs down, this will be a negative change. So we need to complete the table. Okay, so once again, she's always starting at 400. So her change in elevation is 300 feet up. So she ascends up the cliff face 300 feet. So her final elevation should be 400 plus 300, which is 700. Okay, next one. So it's 400 feet. And now she goes 150 feet down. So she descends 150 feet. So now you're going to be, so that's a negative 150 that you're adding to 400. And what you're going to get is 250. Okay, next one, once again, starts at 400. descends 400. So these are opposites. Anytime you are adding opposites, so that's 400 plus a negative 400, your outcome will always be 0. Okay, and then the last one, so now we have to work backwards. So we know that 400 plus some number equals 50. So what we can do here is take 400 and minus 50, and that will give us 350. Okay, so 400, and then we go 350, and we would go down because we're at 50. So we took away 350 feet. So that would be 350 feet down. There we go. Not but an N. Okay, so once again, just like what we did yesterday, if it's a positive if it's an increase, you're adding. If it's a decrease, it's a negative number that you're adding. Or in a sense, once again, adding a negative is the same as subtracting. Okay, here it just says write an additional equation and draw a number line diagram for B. So, write an addition equation. So just like yesterday, what we were doing, so you start at 400. Okay, then you're adding, so 150, but it's down, so it's a negative 150. And that equals 250. Okay, so how that's going to look here. So I'm going to start this at 0. I don't think that'll be enough. So go 50, 100, 150, 200. Just going to extend this line here. 400. Okay, so once again, draw a number line diagram. We go from 0 to 400. Okay, so now if we go down 150, so that's going to be the opposite direction. And when you go down, so once again 400, that'd be 50, 100, and 150. So we end up at 250. Okay, so once again, adding a negative is the same as subtracting. Okay, number 2, a spelunker is down in a cave next to the cliff. If she climbs down deeper into the cave, this will be a negative change. If she climbs up, whether inside the cave or out of the cave, and up the cliff, this will be a positive change. Okay, so same thing as before. If she's going down, it's negative. If she's going up, it's positive. Okay, so she's negative 200 feet in elevation already. She continues to descend down into the cave another 150 feet. So now she's going to be at a negative 350. Okay, next one, she's once again at negative 200, but this time she goes up 100. So she's going to be at negative 100. All right, and once again here we've got a negative 200 and a positive 200. Those are opposites. Anytime you are adding opposites, you're going to end up with 0. And then negative 200, you go up 250. So this one's going to be positive 50. And the last one, similar to the last one in the last chart. Now we know the final elevation. We just have to figure out, did we go up or down, and by how much? So once again, if you don't see it right away, you could take 500 minus 200. That equals 300. So the difference there is 300. And since it went from negative 200 to negative 500, it had to go down because the negative number got larger. Okay, B, it says write an addition equation and draw a number line for diagram for C and D. Include the straight line elevation. Include the starting elevation, the change, and final elevation in your diagram. Okay, so for the equation, so for C, you're at negative 200, and then plus, it's a positive 200 because you went up, and that equals 0. And both these, so where 0 will, nope, got to be negative, so here we've got 0. Let's go 40, 80, 120. These would all be negative. Alright. And to save myself some time, I'm going to cheat here a little bit. Okay, so for the number diagram for the first one, so once again you are at 0, oops, and you go down to negative 200. So that's the starting point. Okay, and then up 200. Okay, so you end at 0. And there we have our drawing diagram for the situation in C. Okay, now for D, for the equation, I'm going to write it over here. So once again, you start at negative 200. You're adding, because you're going up, so a positive 250. That's going to leave you with a positive 50. So you're going to start at negative 200. And then we're going to have to go back. I'll do down here on the bottom. So from negative 200, now you're going 250 in the opposite direction. And since we don't have a, I'm just going to say that's 50. It's a little off. It should be back just a little bit, but should be able to get the general idea. There's 50. So we had our initial, that negative 200, then we came back 50, or 250, putting us at the ending point of 50 above sea level. Or at least 50 feet out of the cave. Okay, number C, it says, what does the expression negative 7 plus 100 tell us about the spelunker? What does the value of the expression tell us? So, this tells that the starting point was at negative 75. And then they ascended up out of the cave 100 feet. And so they are now 25 feet outside of the cave. So negative 75 is the starting point. 100 feet up is what is traveled. And then the final elevation is going to be 25 feet. All right, so from that expression, that's what we can tell. Okay, so that's using the number line, looking at situations given. Now we're going to move on to just given the values, adding the numbers. So it says adding rational numbers. So now rational numbers are all types of numbers. They can be whole numbers, integers, positive, negative. They can be decimals or they can be fractions. Okay, so this first one says find the sum, negative 35 plus 30 plus 5. So we can add the numbers in parentheses first, and you get 35. So negative 35 plus 35, these are opposites. So they're going to just equal 0. All right, next one we've got negative 0.15 plus negative 0.85 plus 12.5. So these first two are negative, so I know I can just add those together and keep the sign negative. So I'm just going to come here and go 0.15, just line everything up. So when I add them together, I can keep track. So 5 plus 5 is going to be 0. Or is 10, drop the 0, carry the 1. 8 plus 2 is going to be 0, or 10, carry the 1. Bring down my decimal, and we've got negative 1. Okay, so this makes it a lot easier. Negative 1 plus 12.5. So this is going to equal 11.5. Okay, so what I did was I added the negatives together first to find out the total amount that I'm subtracting from 12.5. All right, then the last one, 1/2 plus negative 3/4. Well, what I'm going to do here is convert 1/2 into fourths. So I do that by multiplying both the top and bottom by 2. So 1/2 times 2 times 2 equals 2/4. So now this expression is 2/4 plus a negative 3/4. Okay, now that I have it in fourths, it's easy to just go, well, 2 minus 3 is going to equal negative 1. And I'm going to keep my denominator. So it's negative 1/4. Another way to do this is you could have put them into decimal form. So that would be 0.5 plus a negative 0.75. And when you do that, the larger number is negative. So your outcome is going to be negative. But once again, you could line everything up. If there's nothing here after the 5, you just put a 0. So 5 minus 0 is 0. 7 minus 5 is, sorry, I did that wrong. 5 minus 0 is 5, not 0. And then 7 minus 5 is 2. Drop down the decimal. Now since the negative is bigger, your outcome is going to be negative. So negative 0.25 is the same as negative 1/4. Okay, it says, are you ready for more? So find the sum without a calculator. Okay, this looks pretty complicated. However, since we know that opposites are always going to equal 0, we can pair up the opposites first. Because with addition, it doesn't matter which order you add everything together, it's always going to equal the same. So we add the 54 and the negative 54 to get 0. You're going to add the 43 and the negative 43 to get 0. 32 and negative 32 is going to be 0. 21 and negative 21 is going to be 0. And then 10 and negative 10 is going to be 0. So really, knowing that all you're doing is adding a bunch of opposites together, we just know that the outcome is going to be 0. Okay. So this next one, I'm going to skip this one. It has an activity where you need a scrap piece of paper as a measuring tool, and then you're going to answer some questions here. We're just going to move over here to the cool down. Okay, it says add them up. So find each sum, 56 plus negative 56. So once again, we have opposites. So that's going to equal 0. Anytime you add your opposite, you're going to get 0. All right, next one, negative 240 plus 370. So 370 is greater than 240. Therefore, that's going to tell us that our outcome is going to be positive. And now you can just subtract 240 from 370. Get 0, 3, 1. So you get 130. And it'd be positive. Once again, the positive is the larger number. Okay, next one. Now these are both negative. So when you add negatives, you just add them like normal numbers, and then you keep the negative sign. So 5.7 plus 4.2. So once again, just line them up. 7 plus 2 is 9. 5 plus 4 is 9. Make sure to drop the decimal, and then just put a negative sign on your answer. All right, so that was, once again, looking at adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, with a little more focus now on opposite numbers and how their outcome is always 0. Okay,